कृपया यदि तदैवासाम्भयः पीत्वा हृष्येयुस्तत्प्रियाजनाः नम ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati iti namine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at His lotus feet. Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayataya Kripaptiye, Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane, Prabhave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances to Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayata Dasa, who is favored by Srimati Radharani and who is the ocean of transcendental mercy and the deliverer of the science of Krishna. Madhuryojjvala Premakya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karunashakti Vigrahaya Namostate. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, the personified energy of Sri Chaitanya's mercy, who delivered devotional service, which is enriched with conjugal love of Radha and Krishna, coming exactly in the line of revelation from Srila Rupa Goswami. Namaste Gauravani, Shri Murtaye Dinatarane, Rupanuga Viruddhapa Siddhanta Dvanta Harine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the personified teachings of Lord Chaitanya. You are the deliverer of the fallen souls. You do not tolerate any statement which is against the teachings of the devotional service enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. So today is the most exalted appearance day of the disappearance anniversary of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, spiritual master of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder and Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Srila Prabhupada had some template, institutional template for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness already in the form of the Sri Chaitanya Math, Sri Gaudiya Math, now various branches, which were established by his own spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had everything that he needed from his father, except for initiation. And his father sent him to Gaurkishore Das Babaji for his initiation, Diksha. But just as Srila Prabhupada said, everything he learned about Krishna consciousness came from his father and was later on solidified by his spiritual master. So we can say in a similar way that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur actually learned everything from his father, but took initiation upon his order from Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, who was the greatest of the saintly persons in Navadvip in those days. He had several gurus, Shiksha gurus. Vamshi Das Babaji was there, his own father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was there, Jagannath Das Babaji was there for some time also, and of course, Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj. It would be very difficult to imagine ISKCON without Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And we don't really, there would be no chance, practically speaking, very little chance of finding any information about Bhaktivinoda Thakur or any of the wonderful songs or books that he wrote without his son, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who saw in his wisdom and tremendous foresight the value of what his father was giving to the world and the work that his father put into giving that contribution to the world of Vaishnavism. In the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, virtually there were only Sahajiyas in the name of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and it was not very well respected as a result of that. people saw the so-called Vaishnavas as just beggars, persons of dubious moral character. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, after a very objective and wide-ranging search for the absolute truth, actually came to the conclusion that it was in his own hands already, what he had received from his upbringing, Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And unfortunately, in his time, it was hardly possible even to find any bona fide information, Shastric information about Gaudiya Vaishnava teachings. All of this has come from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And the hard work that he put into researching this tradition and making it accessible to all of us. So it's described that he couldn't even find a copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrita in West Bengal. It's kind of like when I first went to Tiruchendur in the deep south, India, famous Shaiva Skanda Kshetra, actually. It's quite possible that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited that place also when he was touring South India. But I asked around the various pundits there, and nobody had a complete copy of the Skanda Purana. That's in the probably the second most prominent Skanda temple in India. Anyway, so such was the situation of Vaishnavism at the turn of the last century. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, out of profound appreciation for everything that his father had done and accomplished, he had to make sure that this thing went on. It was the explicit instruction of his father, Bhaktivinoda, to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to propagate Krishna consciousness. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was insightful enough to recognize that it had to take an institutional form. And in those days especially, for the last maybe 150 years at least, Christian missionaries had been and remain active throughout India, but particularly they were centered in West Bengal because in those days that was the capital of India, British capital. So on the model of Christian missionary institutions, he founded this Gaudiya Math. And Gaudiya Math was able to train so many wonderful Vaishnavas, and the moon amongst so many stars, we can say, in the Gaudiya Math was our own founder Acharya, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Just as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur deeply appreciated and had tremendous faith and dedication and devotion to his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Prabhupada came with that faith and with that dedication and appreciation for everything that he received from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he tried to instill it in a few of his followers as well. So he has done that. Just as Srila Prabhupada spread Krishna consciousness all over the world with the help of his able and sincere disciples, so Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur established the Gaudiya mission, Gaudiya Math, Chaitanya Math. Now it's splintered into so many different groups, but this was all his hard work, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Srila Prabhupada was one of those who derived the benefit. Throughout his life, throughout his spiritual life with the Gaudiya Math, Srila Prabhupada was always a very favored Kripapatra of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Prabhupada told us that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was always very, very kind to him and very favorable to him. Even when his godbrothers, the other disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, were a little bit critical. As we all know, godbrothers can be critical and discouraging sometimes. So Srila Prabhupada was nonetheless encouraged directly from his spiritual master. For one example, someone in the Gaudiya Math, I think it was Bhakti Saranga Goswami, who happened to be a direct family representative of Lord Nityananda, for your information. Quite a significant personality in his own right. But he suggested to his spiritual master that why doesn't Abhay Babu, in those days he was known, our Prabhupada, why doesn't he join Gaudiya Math and become full-time with us? He can be the president in Mumbai, because actually Srila Prabhupada started the Mumbai branch of Gaudiya Math. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur replied that you just leave him alone. Better he not associate or join your company. He'll do everything on his own. That was his typical attitude. And in October of 1935, I think it was, Srila Prabhupada had visited Vrindavan, and he was invited to go and see Sheshashai. Raise your hand if you've seen Sheshashai here in Braj Mandala. Famous temple of Mahavishnu lying on Anantashesh. And Srila Prabhupada had the option that you can go and take darshan of Sheshashai, or we can hear from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And this was during the parikrama that was organized by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Speaking of parikramas, he also is the one who is the founder of this traditional practice every year of circumambulation of Navadvip Dham. Just as we do it here in Vrindavan, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is the one who started the practice of Navadvip Mandala Parikrama. Before him, it was not done. So anyway, Srila Prabhupada thought, I can hear from him. Better to hear from him. 90% of the people who had come for the parikrama went to see Sheshashai Vishnu. But Srila Prabhupada decided to hear, and he heard attentively. Even Srila Prabhupada said, I couldn't always understand what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was saying. Raise your hand if you've had this problem. Do you find it difficult to understand some of the things that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says? Sometimes a little difficult. High English, even for a native speaker. You can see this in Brahma Samhita, for example. But Srila Prabhupada said, I went on hearing. What kind of hearing? Srila Prabhupada mentions throughout his books a certain phrase, which is a very Prabhupada kind of phrase. Rapt attention. What does that mean with rapt attention? To hear with rapt attention. It means that even when the ladies were making garlands in the Srimad Bhagavatam class, Srila Prabhupada did not want that to happen because their attention was splayed. It's not so noisy activity, or at least it shouldn't be. But Srila Prabhupada saw that as a disturbance. Why? Because in one lecture, he was sitting and hearing with rapt attention from his spiritual master, and another person leaned over and asked him a question to clarify what he had also heard. And that was such a disturbance to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that he chastised that disciple, and Prabhupada said, oh, this is so important thing. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had noted this about Srila Prabhupada, that he's able to hear, and he wants to hear also. We were reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 2nd chapter, just the other night. Very, one of the most important passages of the Bhagavatam, which would probably do well to memorize, all of you. Chapter 2, 1st canto. And there Prabhupada writes in one purport that the Kanishta Adhikaris, or the neophyte devotees, they hardly have any taste for hearing anything at any time. Hardly any taste. Really have to work at this to fix the mind and discipline oneself to just open the books and read them. It's not so easy when we are neophytes, which we are. We don't have a taste. But Srila Prabhupada, somehow, he was eager to hear. And this really impressed Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he, of course, he initiated him. And in November 1935, Srila Prabhupada was again with his spiritual master in Vrindavan. It was Kartik, the ideal time to visit. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was staying for a month with his disciples at Radha Kund. I'm here just paraphrasing what we have from the Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, Volume 1, Chapter 4, by Satsvarup Das Goswami, authorized biography of Srila Prabhupada. After leaving Mumbai in July, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had gone to Calcutta. He had given programs on the radio. He delivered many public lectures. He'd welcomed back the preachers that he sent to Europe, and he finished publishing his Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary. Very, very important work. Then in October, he had come to Radha Kund. Occupying the small one-story house Bhaktivedanta Thakur had constructed there, he had been reading and speaking to the assembled devotees on the Upanishads, Ishopanishad, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. He'd also installed deities at Sri Kunja Vihari Math. 5,000 years ago, Radha and Krishna had engaged in transcendental pastimes here, and only 500 years ago, Lord Chaitanya had rediscovered Radha Kund. Lord Chaitanya's great follower, Raghunath Das Goswami, had resided there for many years, constantly chanting Hare Krishna and discussing the activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, in a small bhajan kutir there, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami also compiled the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which was so much appreciated by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, having heard of his spiritual master's stay there, Abhay, who refers to our Srila Prabhupada, brought his son with him and traveled from Mumbai just to have darshan of his spiritual master. To see Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is always an occasion for jubilation. But to see him in Vrindavan was an added perfection. This meeting with his beloved guide and friend was different from the time in 1932, when Abhay had seen him on the Vrindavan Parikrama. Now Abhay was no longer sitting anonymously in the back of the room. Now he was a bona fide disciple, recognized as the Kavi, poet, who had written the praiseworthy poem and essay, and the young man who had listened well, the devotee who had helped with the Allahabad Math, and who had established the Math in Mumbai. Already on this visit, Abhay had had occasion to be alone with his spiritual master, who had remembered Abhay's son and presented him with a small Bhagavabanti jacket. Just see the character of saintly persons. They still do this to this day. They show affection, even for your children. And now as they walked together alone on the bank of Radha Kund, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur turned and spoke confidentially to Abhay. There had been some quarreling amongst his leading disciples in Kolkata, he said, and this distressed him very much. Even now in Vrindavan, it weighed heavily on his mind. Some of his disciples had been fighting over who would use various rooms and facilities at the Gaudiya Math headquarters in Kolkata. That's the big marble Baghbazar temple, some of you are seated. These devotees were all members of the same Math, and the building was for propagating Krishna consciousness under the leadership of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Yet, even in their spiritual master's presence, they were quarreling. Sometimes it happens like that, doesn't it? Brahmanas and Vaishnavas were supposed to be free from envy of any creature. What to speak of envy of one another? If they were to fight now, what would they do after their spiritual master passed away? Well, we now have the answer to that question, don't we? Hindsight is always 20/20, as they say. We know very well what happened. Abhay had no part in these matters and did not even know the details of who was involved. But as he listened to his spiritual master, he also became distressed, deeply concerned. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said to Abhay, Agun jwalbe, there will be fire. One day there would be fire in the Gaudiya Math, and the fire of party interests would spread and destroy, which indeed it did. Abhay heard but did not know what to make of it. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had fought so long and boldly to establish that anyone of any birth could be elevated to become a Brahmin, sannyasi, or Vaishnava. But if his followers became contaminated by a little wealth and the desire for prestige, thereby showing themselves to be still low-class men despite their training in purification, then his mission would be disrupted. If in the name of religion they became attached to ease, position, and prestige, it could only mean that they had failed to grasp the teachings of their spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada said, quote, he was lamenting that these men are simply after the stones and bricks of the building. He condemned. He was very, very sorry. When we were living in a rented house, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, if we could collect 200 or 300 rupees, we were living very nicely at Ulsardanga. We were happier then, but since we've been given this marble palace at Bagh Bazar, there is friction between our men. Who will occupy this room? Who will occupy that room? Who will be the proprietor of this room? Everyone is planning in different ways. It would be better to take the marble from the walls and secure money. If I could do this and print books, that would be better. Abhay felt that his spiritual master was speaking to him in urgency, as if asking him for help, or warning him to avert a disaster. But what could he do? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati then said directly to Abhay, Amar ichha chilo kichu boy karana. If I had a desire to print books, if you ever get money, print books. Standing by Radha Kund and beholding his spiritual master, Abhay felt the words deeply enter his own life. If you ever get money, print books. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now we can get some sense why Srila Prabhupada was so fixed on this principle that he said, books are the basis. Preaching is the essence. Utility is the principle. Purity is the force. Books are the basis. Just like a tree, ISKCON is a kalpavriksha tree for anyone seriously interested in getting Krishna. ISKCON is the kalpavriksha tree to fulfill that desire, but the roots of that tree are these books. And this is why Srila Prabhupada so strongly and repeatedly and urgently and constantly pushed us to read the books. First of all, you have to read them. You cannot give what you don't have. And then distribute the books widely. In print books in as many languages and distribute. We all know, famous lecture in Los Angeles. So here's where it comes from. He didn't invent anything, Srila Prabhupada, about Krishna. Whatever he taught us, nothing was invented. It came from his father, it came from his spiritual father. So this is one of those things. Now it's an unfortunate, he also had the history of Gaudiya Math in front of him before coming to the West, and he saw what happens when personal ambition will destroy everything. I think that's more or less a direct quote that I remember when Srila Prabhupada said, around 1976 or 7. Maybe it was here in Vrindavan even. Personal ambition will ruin everything. This is what he said. Keep it in mind. Prabhupada had it in mind. He was meditating on what happened with the Gaudiya Math, and he could understand very clearly. He was meditating on the Vani that he heard so carefully from his spiritual master, and he never forgot this instruction to print books. It essentially was the same instruction he received in 1922 when he first met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur at Ulvadanga. So this is the real purpose of ISKCON, and especially this month, every year, we really want to emphasize the importance of distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, because nothing we can do is going to compare to what these books have already done and will continue to do if we give them a chance. Srila Prabhupada, again, famous quote, said, you just distribute the books and what will happen? The books will act. Krishne swadhamopagate dharmagyanadibhisaha kalau nashtatrashamesha puranarko dhunoditaha. Now that Krishna has departed 5,000 years ago, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also has departed 500 years ago. Srila Prabhupada also departed 50 years ago. What was there? What is there to guide us? Krishna remains in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is full of Gauravani. And we have, even to make that clear to us, because it's necessary, many of us at least, who don't come from Vaishnava or even Hindu backgrounds, we need some purports. What purports do we need? We need the Bhaktivedanta purports. Accept no substitute. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was pushing on these things, and all the instructions that Srila Prabhupada worked hard to implement with it when ISKCON, they're all ultimately coming from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The deity worship, the book publication, the public preaching, Harinam Sankirtana, Prasadam distribution, everything. He invented nothing. He simply transmitted the same message, like a postal peon, Srila Prabhupada used to say. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was in poor health in Jagannath Puri in December of 1936. This is about a year later. Our Srila Prabhupada was in Mumbai, and he wanted to write his Guru Maharaj a letter. He was thinking that he's always been very kind to me, he'll understand. I want to do something for him. So he wrote that you've got so many disciples and they're brahmacharis and sannyasis, but I'm a householder. I can't do what they're doing. I can give money sometimes I'm doing, but if there's any particular service that you want from me, please instruct me. Shishyaste ham shadhimam tvam prapannam. 2 weeks later, he received a reply. Quote, I'm fully confident that you can explain in English our thoughts and arguments to the people who are not conversant with the languages of the other members. This will do much good to yourself as well as to your audience. I have every hope that you can turn yourself into a very good English preacher if you serve the mission to inculcate the novel impression of Lord Chaitanya's teachings to the people in general, as well as philosophers and religionists. Abhay at once recognized this to be the same instruction he received at their first meeting in 1922. He took it as a confirmation. There was now no doubt as to the purpose of his life. What his spiritual master had said in Kolkata in 1922 had not been a chance remark, nor had that been a chance meeting. The instruction was the same. Turn yourself into a very good English preacher. This will do much good to yourself as well as to your audience. About 2 weeks later, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur passed away from this world. He was in poor health in Jagannath Puri. He came to Kolkata, and he was in Kolkata for some time. And when a doctor came, tried to give him injections, he protested. Actually, Srila Prabhupada told us that my spiritual master left this planet early. He was young when he left. He was not so old. But he left this world earlier than normal because he was disgusted. He was disgusted with the behavior of his so-called disciples. It has to be said. We would not be doing our spiritual master Srila Prabhupada and his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, any justice by neglecting each and every instruction that he's given to us. And this is one of them. What happened to the Gaudiya Math? They harbored personal ambitions within their hearts. That destroyed their character and their Krishna consciousness, their devotion, such that they could not be empowered to transmit the same to the rest of the world, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur desired. Even in his presence, some of them were not.
Hare Krishna. So we'll now hear the glorification of His Grace Mukunda Datta Prabhu. Just sharing the screen. So about hearing about His Grace Mukunda Datta Prabhu. Your screen sharing is paused. Let me know if my screen is visible now. Yes?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So, thank you. So about early life and introduction to ISKCON. So Mukunda Datta Prabhu is from Southern California, and from a very young age, he showed his spiritual tendencies and was always keen about Eastern spiritual style, especially towards practicing yoga. And it said that by the age of 10, he was so dedicated towards Eastern philosophy that he became vegetarian and he started practicing yoga. And apart from this, he also started to learn Sanskrit in his high school. He was very much touched by the philosophy of India and Asia. And how he came to ISKCON is amazing. He came into touch with the Hare Krishna movement in early 1970s. So it was again the book of Srila Prabhupada, Bhagavad Gita as it is. And in his teenage years, he got this Bhagavad Gita. And there was one lecture where he describes that when I read this Bhagavad Gita, it was an experience which said the lights came on, means I got the path of life. And at the age of 15, like you might have seen this video that Prabhuji looks very young. So is he really Srila Prabhupada disciple? Yes. So, at which age he joined? He joined at the age of 15. In 1976, at the age of 15, he got deeply inspired by Prabhupada's books and presentation of Krishna Bhakti, and he thus joined ISKCON. And he was very much inspired by Prabhupada's chanting, philosophy, how compassionate he was. And now we can see how staunch he was, that at the age of 15, he firmly decided to join ISKCON full time for this whole lifetime. So, yeah, about the initiation and association, he was personally initiated by Srila Prabhupada because he was way too young when he got initiated. And I would like to talk about the services and roles in ISKCON, which he has done. So, Prabhuji has done services in various capabilities, like it can be, from the range of scholarly work, devotional service, preaching, translating, editing. So, just going into depth about, first of all, about preaching and devotional activities. So, Prabhuji has traveled widely around the globe for preaching Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And particularly, devotees know him for his kirtans. Prabhuji has amazing voice and his devotional singing is amazing. Like even from his American look, you can't expect that he can sing in Bengali accent. He sings amazing. You would literally feel like some Gaudiya Vaishnava is singing. A devotee from Gaudiya, like Bengali devotee or Odia devotee singing. He sings with that accent. And he's also trained in classical North Indian music. And plays harmonium and various instrument, and has recorded various and has got various albums. He has recorded various bhajans, etc. And assisted in temple programs and preaching activities. Apart from this, he was also engaged in administrative roles. So Prabhuji is known for his scriptural studies. So one of the major contributions of him is scripture and translation editing work in BBT. So about BBT, actually he works as a Sanskrit to English translator and editor for the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. And like there are various scriptures in ISKCON which are very highly given by the acharyas like Bilva Mangal Thakur and Padyavali by Narottam Das Thakur and various other books which are not so much published and known in ISKCON. So I mean they are very tough to understand. So some of these books are translated and edited by Prabhuji's, like the Govinda Damodar Stotra by Srila Bilva Mangal Thakur is done by Prabhuji. So, and as we heard about Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu, he was working on Bhagavatamritam. So, Prabhuji helped him complete that. And apart from this, also Bhagavad Sandarbha Padyavali. And apart just from this, the books of Gaudiya Acharyas, which we are seeing in ISKCON, he has also studied South Asian literature and languages, including Sanskrit, Bengali, and Braj Bhasha, so that he could, learn the poetries by Surdas and other acharyas, like which gave Krishna's pastime and everything. So even after being an American, he learned all these languages just so that he can help all the devotees in this mission to, you know, to get the taste, get the real realm of what the acharyas and scriptures have written for us. And actually, his goal, he says in one of the articles that his goal was to teach bhakti literature to every devotee. And thus because of the same mission statement, he joined BBT so that he could serve everyone. So, as an administrator in ISKCON, he's a member of SAC, Shastric Advisory Committee or Shastric Advisory Council of ISKCON's GBC. And Prabhuji also has served as Gurukul teacher and Pujari. So he's an amazing devotee. We have seen him doing kirtans. Moving upon the devotional qualities. So apart from engaging in so many services, Prabhuji is very soft spoken and very humble. Like he's very approachable. Any devotee can go next to him and ask for personal suggestions, guidance, and everything. He's very personal and always respectful to others. And he's known for his personal sadhana, undoubtedly, because he's very strict and staunch followers of Srila Prabhupada's Vani and towards his sadhana. And I read an article in ISKCON Desire Treat said that he is very faithful to the Guru Parampara tradition, loyal to Srila Prabhupada with a strong desire to preserve and propagate authentic Gaudiya Vaishnava teachings. He is inspired. He inspires devotees by his steady fastness and loyalty, remembered for his kind dealings and devotional simplicity. And one more thing that was written. Prabhuji is a combination of scholarship, musical talent, and devotional service. And he's not just about the academic editing scriptures and everything, but also we can see through his nature that he practically applies it out aloud so that every devotee knows, like, he doesn't just speak aloud that Shastras say this, Shastras say that, but he practically applies in his life so that, we can get a life practical example of a person doing that. About his legacy and remembrance, he is remembered as a faithful disciple of who lived by Srila Prabhupada's instruction. Prabhuji is known specifically because he is very strict in sadhana and he is in the mood to preserve the Gaudiya Parampara, not to deviate even an inch by that. So Prabhuji is known by who lived by Srila Prabhupada's instructions. He has inspired many devotees through his service, humility, and determination. His life remains a shining example of disciplehood in ISKCON. And currently, Prabhuji lives in Govardhan, and over there he's engaged in editing more and more stuff, publication for BBT. Especially, he is working for the philosophical works of acharyas in our Gaudiya Vaishnava image, like Shat Sandarbha and various other scriptures which are given by the acharyas, the Goswamis, and he's majorly contributing in that, so that we all can get these scriptures as soon as possible in our disciplic succession, and we can read what acharyas gave us, and we don't need to deviate. Like, we know that many devotees are deviating here and there because we think that Srila Prabhupada gave only the basic books, scriptures which we read. There is nothing more. But so our BBT is working on the scriptures which our acharyas gave, so that we keep in the same lineage and don't deviate. Jai His Grace Mukunda Datta Prabhu ki Jai. जगत गुरु शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरि हरि बोल। हरे कृष्णा।